These are not mere tales of fiction. These are real-life nightmares experienced by real people. So, lock your doors, turn down the lights, and join us as we unravel the horrifying truths that lie within these hotel walls. Story number 1, The Unsettling Stranger, a family's chilling encounter at a lonely hotel. It was supposed to be a relaxing weekend getaway for the Patel family. After weeks of juggling work and school, Ria and Arjun decided to take their 10-year-old daughter, Mira, on a mini vacation to a cozy hotel nestled in the hills of Shimla, India. The hotel, though somewhat dated, promised a scenic view, fresh mountain air, and much-needed peace. From the moment they checked in, something felt slightly off. The lobby was nearly empty, with only a few guests scattered around. Among them was a man who seemed out of place, dressed in an oversized coat despite the moderate weather. His scruffy beard and piercing eyes gave him a peculiar, unsettling aura. At first, the Patels didn't pay much attention. After all, hotels often attract an assortment of personalities. However, as they made their way to their room, they noticed the man lingering in the hallway, watching them intently. Ria whispered to Arjun, "Do you think he's just curious, or?" Arjun dismissed her concerns with a chuckle, trying to brush it off. "Relax, it's just one of those odd coincidences," he reassured her. That evening, they headed to the hotel restaurant for dinner. The man was there too, sitting alone at a table by the corner. His gaze rarely wavered from the Patel family, his presence a dark cloud over what should have been a cheerful meal. Mira, perceptive beyond her years, leaned toward her mother and whispered, "Why does that uncle keep staring at us?" By now, the unease was palpable. After dinner, the family decided to take a walk around the hotel gardens to shake off the discomfort. The moonlight illuminated the paths, casting long shadows on the cobblestones. For a while, they felt at ease, but as they turned a corner, there he was again, standing a few feet away, partially obscured by the shadows of a tree. "I said, let's go back to our room," Arjun said firmly, shielding Mira as they briskly walked past the man. Once inside, Ria double-checked the locks on the door. "This is getting creepy," she admitted. Arjun nodded in agreement, but hesitated to report the man, unsure if he was truly a threat or just an eccentric guest. The night passed uneventfully until around 2 a.m., when Ria was jolted awake by a faint sound, like someone softly tapping on their door. She shook Arjun awake, her heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. The tapping stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. Arjun peered through the peephole, but saw nothing unusual. "Go back to sleep," he said, trying to sound confident, though his voice betrayed his nerves. The next morning, as they checked out, the family spotted the man in the lobby once more. This time, however, his demeanor was different. He looked directly at Mira, his lips curling into a faint, almost knowing smile. They hurriedly left the hotel and didn't stop until they were miles away. Ria later learned from an online review that other guests had reported similar experiences with a mysterious man who seemed to haunt the premises. No one knew who he was or why he acted so strangely, but his unsettling behavior was enough to give anyone sleepless nights. The Patels vowed never to return to that hotel, though the memory of the stranger lingers with them to this day, a chilling reminder that sometimes people can be far more terrifying than the unknown. Story number 2, The Masked Intruder, a terrifying night in room 306. It was supposed to be an ordinary work trip for Laura, a 27-year-old marketing executive from Chicago. She checked into the Meadow Inn, a modest hotel in the outskirts of Denver, ahead of an early morning conference. The room was unremarkable but cozy, with pale blue walls, a queen-sized bed, and a small outdated TV perched on a wooden stand. Exhausted from her flight, she decided to unwind with room service and a classic horror movie before calling it a night. The movie she chose, a slasher flick about a masked killer, was both thrilling and unnerving. As Laura sipped her tea, she chuckled at how cliché some of the scenes were. Victims ignoring obvious red flags, eerie noises conveniently dismissed. She was thankful for the reality check that her situation was nothing like the absurd plot unfolding on screen, or so she thought. Just as the movie reached its climax, a soft rustling sound broke through the silence of her room. At first, Laura dismissed it as a quirk of the old building, but then it came again. Louder this time, like fabric brushing against wood. She muted the TV and froze, her heart pounding. The sound was unmistakably coming from the closet at the foot of her bed. Laura stared at the closed door, every instinct telling her to run. Instead, she reached for her phone and turned on the flashlight, her hands trembling. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. The room seemed to hold its breath. When no answer came, she tried to convince herself she was being paranoid. "It's probably just the old pipes," she muttered, trying to calm her racing heart. Summoning her courage, she walked to the closet and placed her hand on the doorknob. With a quick pull, she swung it open. The closet was empty, just a few wooden hangers clattered against each other. Laura let out a shaky laugh, relieved but still unnerved. She shut the door firmly and crawled back into bed, determined to finish her movie and forget the whole thing. Minutes later, a new sound shattered her fragile sense of security. A faint creak, as if someone was shifting their weight on the wooden floor. This time, it was coming from behind her. Before she could react, the closet door swung open violently, and a figure stepped out. Laura's blood turned to ice as she took in the intruder. A tall, thin man, wearing a featureless white mask. He stood still for a moment, staring at her as if gauging her reaction. Then, without a word, he darted toward her bag on the desk, rummaging through it with alarming speed. Paralyzed by fear, Laura struggled to move. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her body refused to cooperate. The intruder grabbed her wallet and laptop, sparing only a fleeting glance at her before sprinting out the door, leaving it ajar. For what felt like hours, Laura sat frozen in bed, too terrified to even call for help. When she finally found the courage to alert the front desk, they assured her security would investigate, but by the time the police arrived, the man had vanished without a trace. The incident left Laura shaken for weeks. Despite the hotel's apologies and increased security measures, she never stayed there or at any small hotel again. She later learned that other guests had reported strange occurrences in room 306, but no one had ever caught the masked intruder. To this day, Laura can't watch horror movies without thinking of that night. What unnerves her most isn't the fact that someone broke in, but the question that still haunts her. How long had he been hiding in the closet before he revealed himself? Story number 3, The Midnight Intruder. A chilling encounter in room 214. Liam Jacobs wasn't proud of storming out of his parents' house that night. The argument with his father had escalated beyond control, and he needed space. Driving aimlessly through the small, sleepy town of Ridgeview, he stumbled upon a weathered sign pointing to Ridgeview Lodge. It wasn't luxurious, but it promised a bed and some quiet, a perfect refuge for the night. The lodge was a modest 2-story building with flickering neon letters that seemed to groan under their own weight. The receptionist, a tired-looking middle-aged man, handed Liam the key to room 215 without much conversation. The room was as nondescript as the building. Faded floral wallpaper, a creaky double bed, and an antique armchair that looked like it hadn't been moved in decades. Liam dropped his duffel bag on the floor and flopped onto the bed, scrolling through his phone in an attempt to distract himself from the gnawing guilt of the argument. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. He tried to ignore it, but a strange sensation crept over him, a feeling of being watched. Shaking it off as paranoia, Liam decided to shower. As the hot water steamed up the tiny bathroom, he thought he heard a faint knock on the door. He paused, water dripping into his eyes, straining to listen. There it was again. 3 deliberate knocks. Wrapping a towel around himself, he cautiously approached the door and peered through the peephole. The dim hallway was empty. He opened the door a crack, looking both ways, but there was no one in sight. Dismissing it as a prank or his imagination, he locked the door and went to bed. Hours later, Liam was jolted awake by the sound of the doorknob rattling. His heart pounded as he lay still, staring at the door. The rattling stopped, replaced by a soft scraping noise, as though something was being dragged across the floor outside. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Liam froze. His breath caught in his throat. Standing in the doorway was a woman. Her long black hair hung limp around her face, her pale skin almost glowing in the dim light. She wore a tattered dress that seemed drenched, leaving wet footprints on the carpet. "Who are you? What do you want?" Liam's voice trembled as he scrambled to the far side of the bed. The woman didn't answer. She stepped into the room slowly, her dark eyes locked onto his. Liam's body was paralyzed with fear as she walked to the armchair in the corner and sat down, her gaze never wavering. "Leave! I'll call the police!" he shouted, grabbing his phone. But the moment he looked down to unlock it, she was gone. The chair was empty, the footprints leading to it abruptly ending on the carpet. The door was still slightly ajar, swaying gently as the wind whispered through the hallway. Terrified, Liam packed his belongings and left the hotel, driving aimlessly until dawn. He later returned to retrieve his wallet, which he'd left behind in his panic. When he described the incident to the receptionist, the man's face turned ashen. "Room 214? You're not the first to see her," the receptionist said in a hushed tone. He explained that years ago, a woman had drowned in the nearby river, and guests in room 214 often reported seeing a soaked, ghostly figure late at night. Liam never stayed in a small-town hotel again, and the memory of the woman still haunts him. He often wonders why she appeared to him and what would have happened if he hadn't looked away. One thing is certain, he'll never forget the Midnight Intruder in room 214. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.